Saturday's college football games produced a whole bunch of interesting storylines. Today, I'm going to give you my opinion on a few of these. This is QB Unfiltered, my take, totally random thoughts.
I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you want to play tough and want to hate this, I'll always show up and make a statement.
All right, last week I gave you my opinion on who I thought were going to be the finalists for the Heisman Trophy. The guys that were going to be sitting in the front row in New York City in early December. And my selections are quarterback Cam Ward from Miami, quarterback Dylan Gabriel from Oregon, running back Ashton Jeanty from Boise State, and two-way player extraordinaire Travis Hunter from the University of Colorado. I also had a dark horse in there if they invite 5 dudes to the ceremony or in case, something goes on with one of those other 4. And that's Ole Miss quarterback Jackson Dart. By the way, does Jackson Dart not have the coolest quarterback name in college football? Dart. Fox Sports also weighs in on this. These guys really crack me up, and I'm going to talk about some of the criteria that is being used to select the Heisman Trophy winner. But Fox Sports, in talking about all of these players that I have listed that were my picks, they talked about Cam Ward. And they said, his Heisman campaign took a hit in the loss against Georgia Tech, giving the Canes their first loss of the season, as Cam Ward threw for 350 yards and 3 touchdowns. And I'm going, what? What are we talking about here, folks? He didn't put on his usual wow, did you see that performance? But throwing for 350 and 3 tugs, no picks. I'll take that. So would every other Division I quarterback in college football. And this has been a debate for a long time. Does the Heisman Trophy go to the best player in the country, regardless of position, or does it go to the best player who's also on the best team, or does it just go to a quarterback or another offensive skill player? Or does it go to the most media-hyped player? Or does it go to the best player from a media-hyped conference? I think you can probably guess which conference I'm talking about. Or does it go to the best player from a historically dominant and iconic football program, i.e. Alabama? So those are all parts of this Heisman debate. And if we are awarding the trophy to the best individual player in college football, then let's do just that. It should be based on great performances consistently week by week. I also think another huge criteria has to be, does this player's skill set and performance enhance his team's success? And unfortunately, I feel that a lot of weight is given to the guy whose team has the best record or is perceived as a team that is going to be competing for and playing for a national championship. An example of this is in 2001, when the University of Nebraska quarterback Eric Crouch won the Heisman Trophy. The Cornhuskers that year played for the national championship, and they were one of the 2 top teams in the country pretty much the entire season. In the rankings, Eric Crouch was not the best player in the country that year by far, and he walked away with the Heisman Trophy. So we'll see what happens. That's one of the big debates in coffee shops and bars across the country. Let's see how it shakes down. But again, I'm going with Cam Ward, Dylan Gabriel, Ashton Jeanty, and Travis Hunter. Okay, by now I'm sure you've all seen or heard about Brian Kelly's confrontation with one of his players Saturday in their game against Florida. Little sideline drama. Wide receiver Chris Hilton Jr. got a tongue lashing from Kelly on the sideline after an offensive series. And Kelly, you can pretty much know what he was saying. Lip readers have come out and said it. I'm pretty sure he said, "Don't walk away from me, and you are uncoachable." Now, I'm not a Brian Kelly fan, and that goes way back to when he was coaching at Grand Valley State. And that's a topic for another show. But this is what everybody needs to understand out there. This happens to some extent every Friday and Saturday across the country at every level during football season, except the NFL. Okay, remember in the NFL, the players make more money than the coaches, but on every other sideline, high school, junior college level, you're going to have a head coach or an assistant coach that has basically that same conversation with a player about being uncoachable. And a little side note here, if LSU wasn't struggling, if they were winning games consistently, this would have been glossed over and it would have been no big deal. But because Kelly is on the hot seat now and they're on a losing streak, people are going to blow this way out of the water. And we need to talk about that here for a little bit. Now, athletics from every sport and at every level is chock full of dudes that are uncoachable / selfish players. And that means it doesn't matter what your record is. It doesn't matter what scheme you're running, offensively or defensively. It doesn't matter who the coaching staff is, how good the coaches are. You're going to have players on teams who think they know more than the coaches or don't give a shit. They're going to just do things the way they want to do them. They have no concept of how, when they don't do their job, how it kills their offense or it kills their defense. It's all about them. Guys, selfish. I'm going to do it. That's what it means when a guy's uncoachable. Now, I refer to these guys, and I referred to those guys when I coached as coach killers. What I mean by that is those undisciplined, selfish, and uncoachable players get coaches fired. They're coach killers. And there are so many examples that I could refer to that I've been a part of in my 36-year coaching career. And I watch it every Saturday in college football, and I watch it every Sunday in the NFL. And there is really only one way to stop that type of behavior, and that is you take the guy that's uncoachable and you sit his ass on the bench. And I'm not talking for a series or two. I'm talking about an entire game. It is really magical and mystical when you sit one of those guys down for a game, how they all of a sudden become a team player and all of a sudden become disciplined and magically start doing things the way the coaches want them to do it. Sit their ass on the bench. The bench speaks volumes, and it's almost 100% guaranteed that when you sit a guy on the bench for an entire game, he has a complete attitude change. He sees the world differently. Okay, so in an era where a whole lot of people are horrified that a coach would have the balls to get into a player's face and yell at him, here's a little theory that's 100% true throughout sports history. This is 100% true. The lessons taught and learned by playing competitive sports, it doesn't matter really what level, but the guys that go through peewee ball, junior high ball, high school ball, college ball, the lessons learned on the athletic field, these guys take those and they're able to navigate more successfully through life and what life throws at them than the average person that does not play competitive sports. People that are knee-jerk in this thing, you're way off base, way off base. This happens every week across the country in athletics, and particularly in football, where 11 guys are playing on offense and 11 guys are playing on defense, and all 11 have to be doing their job or else you're not going to be successful. And that is why I have said on other shows like 6, 7 months ago, 8 months ago, that the best football jobs in America are high school and junior college. Why? because at the high school and junior college level, when you got dudes that are uncoachable, that are disrespectful, that don't do their job and have a really bad-ass elitist attitude in high school and junior college, you just tell those guys to take their shit off and go sit on the bench. Okay, how much does a starting quarterback affect the entire attitude and the mojo of a football team? Perfect example of answering that question is the University of Utah. What a brutal situation they've had this year with quarterbacks. They have lost 3 QBs to season-ending injuries and are now playing with their number 4 quarterback. I don't care who you are, what level of football you're playing at. When you get down to your 4th guy, you're going to have issues. And it's not just issues of the difference in talent between your starter, your number 2 guy versus your number 4 guy. It's the effect of having your number 4 quarterback, what that does to the rest of the team, offense and defense. Okay. And Utah is a perfect example of that. Their mojo, their guy that made them go was Cam Rising. You know, for as skilled as he is, or as skilled as he was, his attitude, his swagger, his presence just gave everybody in the Utes program a boost. You know, and they've sort of lost that edge now. It's really sad. And that's how important quarterbacks are to your program besides the physical stuff. You know, I've been saying this all year about Miami's Cam Ward. I think one of his superpowers and one of the things that he does for the Canes is he always keeps those guys on a even keel when things are not going well. All right. Never gets too high, never gets low at all. He handles adversity well. He never goes in the tank. And not only his offensive teammates, but his defensive teammates feed off of that stuff. The starting quarterback, whether he's your number 1 guy or he's your number 2 guy, the rest of the team, they are looking to see how he handles situations, good or bad. And they also know in the back of their mind when they got their dude out there playing that things are going to be okay. And right now, Utah is struggling with that. Okay, let's talk about the Colorado Buffaloes here for a second. You know, they're really strong showing so far this season. They're 8-2. Most, if not all, the attention has been given to quarterback Shedeur Sanders and the unbelievably talented and versatile Travis Hunter. I think one of the biggest improvements for them, besides their offensive line and pass protection, their defense is getting after it. You know, they got some dudes out there on defense that are flying around and sure tacklers and making plays. So, you know, I'm sure that Sanders and Hunter are going to continue to get the headlines. But when you watch the Buffs play for the remainder of the season and the bowl game that they play in, just notice how much better their defense is this year than it was last year. Okay, how in the hell did the Oregon State Beavers win 4 games this year? Now, they've got a few games left, obviously. How did they win 4 games? Their performance this past Saturday against Air Force was pretty astounding offensively. And let's go over some of the numbers right now. I know that this is just 1 game and it's not a total judgment on a season, but the Beavers bebopped into Colorado Springs, Colorado this past weekend to play the Air Force Academy. Air Force was 2-7 going into that game. And at halftime, the Beavers had carved out these offensive statistics in the first half. 0 points, 69 total offensive yards, 4 first downs. They ran a whopping 18 plays. They had 21 yards passing and completed 2 balls. But they had a strong second half where they came out and put up 0 points, 106 total offensive yards, 5 first downs. They ran 27 plays. They threw for 85 yards. And they had 7 completions. All right. So for the game, in their passing game, they were 9 for 21 And for the game, they averaged 11 plays a quarter, 43 yards of offense a quarter, 2 first downs a quarter, 17 rushing yards, but they made up for that by averaging 26 passing yards per quarter, and they averaged 2 completions per quarter. Now, when I saw these halftime numbers, I thought, well, they are playing in basically the mountains of Colorado. So I would imagine they're playing in snow, wind, just brutal weather. And then I pulled up the clips and saw that it was bright blue skies and sunny out, pretty much perfect playing conditions. So what to make of all the subpar quarterback performances and offensive performances this season and last season and the season before that? I mean, it's really hard to do what some of these teams are doing with their offensive production, particularly in the passing game. I truly believe that the results that we're seeing is directly associated to the transfer portal and the NIL. And I say both of those together because they're tied together at the hip. But I want you to think about this now. Instead of having a high school quarterback that comes into a program, he shirts, he grows for 4 or 5 years. He may start as a redshirt sophomore or a redshirt junior, start for a couple years, maybe 3 years. And he's in the system for 4 or 5 years playing for the same offensive coordinator with the same quarterback coach running the same offensive scheme. Now compare that to the transfer portal now where you have 1 and 2 year mercenaries that are bouncing from team to team to team, and they get on campus and they've got a couple of months to figure out the system. They're not coached by the quarterback coaches because there's just not a lot of time to do that, right? You bring them in, you pay them their money, and you line them up and play, and you hope that the quarterbacks are good enough to overcome the fact that they haven't been coached up. Their mechanics aren't good. And it shows in the statistics on Saturday. Now, not every offense in college football is going through these problems, but the number of teams that are producing numbers like Oregon State did against Air Force, those are becoming more prevalent as we go through the season. Started with the first game this year. We're on week 10 now. Every week there are games where offenses are doing this stuff. It's crazy. It's like football has gone back to the 1960s with their offense. And the bottom line is this, you can squawk, and I squawk about the portal and the NIL, and I think it's ruined college football, and it's taken college football to stepping off a cliff. All that shit is totally out of control with the portal and the money. At the end of the day, the biggest hit that college football has taken is the product on the field. And the people that suffer because of that are the fan base. The fan base, the guys that live and die and breathe with their college football team. That's, I talked about this in another show. It's got to be absolutely just maddening to a lot of these fans that the quarterbacks and the receivers and the stars that they're cheering for their team are going to be playing against them and their team next year after they jump in the portal to get that bag of money and to be assured that they're going to go somewhere and start. So, that's a story for another day. Last week, I did a show called The Thinning of the QB Herd, and I talked about the list of quarterbacks in the preseason that people were projecting to be the elite quarterbacks this year in college football. And after 10 games, and from game 1 through game 10, we have started to thin out and separate the truly elite quarterbacks from the guys that have kind of just stayed the same to the guys, in my opinion, that have dropped. And so one of those guys that I talked about that had dropped, in my opinion, was Georgia quarterback Carson Beck. And the reasons I gave for that, number one, he's thrown way too many interceptions this year. He's been a turnover machine way too many picks. And the second thing I talked about is watching him play this year. He's got really bad body language out there. We talked about earlier handling adversity and the lessons that teaches you. And I talked about Cam Ward and the fact that he never goes in the tank when things don't go well for Miami, right? He's always got that look in his eye like, hey, no big deal. We're getting back on the field and I'm going to make plays and we're going to score. When Carson this season throws a pick, turns the ball over, he drops his head. He shakes his head. He's got this look on his face like he's defeated. And his teammates are looking at him to see how he handles throwing an interception. They feed off of him being stoic, him having that aura of, fuck it, I'm going to go out there and make a play the next time we get the ball, as opposed to, oh, geez, looking down at his shoe tops. Okay. So with that being said, Carson Beck now rolls in and plays the University of Tennessee on Saturday and lights them up. You know, he goes 25 for 40 for 347 yards and 3 touchdowns with 0 picks. That's the type of production that Georgia needs from Carson Beck. So we're going to see how he does this next game and for the remainder of the season. But Georgia has a chance to go places. Their defense is pretty damn salty, but they need Carson Beck to be the Carson Beck that a lot of gurus and pontificators said was going to be one of the elite quarterbacks in college football this year. Okay, and finally, later on this week, look for my first standalone chalk cast where I'm going to bring a whiteboard in and it's going to be just chalking up some basic X's and O's and just trying to, you know, talk a little football. And the first chalk cast this week will be dedicated to that iconic football wizard, offensive guru, and quarterback evaluator, ESPN's Mina Kimes, and her partner in crime, Mel Kiper. And I'm going to chalk up a couple of very simple routes that I used in my coaching career to carve up that pesky cover 2 defense that Kiper wants the NFL to abolish, and Mina Kimes says is why quarterbacks are struggling so bad in the NFL this year. You can't throw against cover 2. So we're going to talk about that. And that'll be coming up in the middle of this next week, maybe Thursday at the latest. So be looking for that. Okay. So if you got something out of this podcast, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. I greatly appreciate the support. This is QB Unfiltered. And remember, always throw the ball short to guys who can score. See ya.
I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up.